Captain Samuel Wright sat at the head of the conference table aboard the UES Defender. His fingers tapped a steady rhythm on the smooth metal surface. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. 6 hours had passed since the Krillin attack, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "They've sent a formal summons," Olivia Martinez said, breaking the silence. As the ship's diplomatic officer, her usual calm voice now carried an edge of concern. "The Galactic Council wants us to appear before them in 24 hours. Daniel Kelly, the security chief, let out a short laugh. "Of course they do. They saw what happened when we stopped playing nice." Samuel looked around at his senior staff. Their faces showed a mix of pride and worry. The Krillins had attacked 3 human colony ships without warning. The Council had done nothing. So the UES Defender had responded, destroying 2 Krillin warships and disabling 3 others in less than 5 minutes. The Council representatives looked shocked. Olivia continued, "I don't think they expected us to be so efficient." "Efficient is a nice way to put it," Engineer Frank Murphy said with a slight smile. "Did you see their faces when we deployed the Magnus weapons? They didn't think we had that kind of technology." Lieutenant Ethan Powell, the tactical officer, nodded. "For years we've been showing them only our outdated systems, following protocol, being the polite newcomers. Then they back the Krillins in an attack, and suddenly we show our real capabilities." A soft beep interrupted them. The large screen on the wall lit up, showing the stern face of Admiral Patricia Collins. "Captain Wright," she said, her image slightly distorted by the secure channel. "I assume you've received the Council summons." "Yes, Admiral. We were just discussing our response." The Council station hung in space like a giant metal flower. Its 5 massive pedal-like structures extended from a central hub, each housing representatives from hundreds of different worlds. The UES Defender approached slowly, following the designated path for diplomatic vessels. Samuel adjusted his formal uniform as he stood in the shuttle bay with his team. Olivia Martinez wore her diplomatic attire, while Lieutenant Ethan Powell and Science Officer Nicole Harris were dressed in standard blue uniforms. Security Chief Daniel Kelly and his 4 officers wore their dress uniforms, but Samuel knew they carried concealed weapons. "Remember," Samuel said quietly, "we're here to uncover evidence. Maintain protocol until we know more." The shuttle ride to the station was silent. When they docked, a group of blue-skinned Jax officials met them with obvious disdain. "The human delegation will follow," said the tallest Jax, not bothering with a greeting. As they walked through the station's wide corridors, Samuel noticed how other alien species whispered and moved away. Some looked afraid, others angry. The news of what happened to the Krillin ships had clearly spread. The Council chamber was enormous, with rising tiers of seats filled with representatives from across the galaxy. In the center stood a circular platform where speakers addressed the Council. The human delegation was directed to stand there, exposed from all sides. Council Speaker Zix Thura, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, rose from the highest tier. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session," Zix Thura announced, voice echoing through the chamber. "We gather to address the violent actions taken by the human vessel UES Defender against Krillin ships engaged in standard patrol activities." Samuel felt his jaw tighten. Standard patrol activities. The Krillins had fired on unarmed colony ships. Olivia stepped forward. "Respected Council, we request permission to present evidence of the unprovoked Krillin attack that preceded our response." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zix Thura waved one hand dismissively. "The Council has reviewed the Krillin account of events." "But not ours," Samuel said, stepping forward. Several Council security guards tensed. "Very well," Zix Thura said. "Present your evidence." Lieutenant Powell activated a holographic display showing the colony ships and the approaching Krillin vessels. The recording clearly showed the Krillins firing first. "This is human fabrication," called out Senior Counselor Drav of the Jax Collective. The Krellans were responding to human weapons being aimed at them. Our weapons were not active, Powell replied calmly. The data signature confirms this. Samuel noticed Council member Lurvex of the Meldorian Empire shifting uncomfortably in his seat. His green scales seemed to pale as he whispered to an aide. While the Council's attention was on the display, Nicole activated a small device in her palm. Samuel knew she was scanning for communication frequencies and data transmissions throughout the chamber. The human response was disproportionate, Zixthera stated. 5 Krellan vessels disabled or destroyed in response to minor damage to your colony ships. Minor damage, Daniel Kelly said, his voice rising slightly. 23 human civilians died in that attack. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. This council has always advocated for measured responses, Zixthera continued. The human demonstration of military capability is concerning to many worlds. Samuel looked around the chamber, noting which species seemed to agree and which looked uncertain. He noticed subtle movements of security personnel around the outer edges of the room. They were being surrounded. We responded to protect our people, Samuel said, as any of your worlds would do. The difference, said Councillor Drav, leaning forward, is that other worlds follow Council guidelines on military technology. The weapons you used were far beyond what you've reported possessing. Olivia stepped forward again. We've reported everything required by Council regulations. Then explain how a newcomer species managed to disable advanced Krellan warships in under 5 minutes, Lurvex suddenly demanded, his voice shaking slightly. Samuel met his gaze directly. Perhaps, Counselor, you should explain how the Krellans acquired Meldorian phase cannons when such technology transfers are prohibited by this very council. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Lurvex stood abruptly, knocking over his water container. Zixthera banged a ceremonial staff. This session will recess for 1 hour, while the council considers this matter privately. As the council members filed out, Samuel noticed Nicole nod slightly. She had found something. The human delegation gathered in their temporary quarters on the station. The room was plain with minimal furniture, clearly not designed for human comfort. Samuel paced while the others worked at various tasks. Tell me what you found, he said to Nicole, who was hunched over her datapad. She looked up, her eyes bright with discovery. During the session, I detected encrypted transmissions between 3 council members and somewhere outside the chamber. The encryption was good, but not good enough. Who were they? Daniel asked, leaning forward. Councillor Drav of the Jacks, Lurvex of the Meldorians, and surprisingly, Representative Core of the Plexans. Samuel frowned. The Plexans have been neutral toward Earth. Apparently not anymore, Nicole said. I couldn't break the full encryption, but I caught fragments. They're discussing containment protocols and human isolation strategy. At the other end of the room, Grace Anderson, their communications specialist, looked up from her console. Captain, I've been monitoring local transmissions. There's unusual activity between the Council's security forces and a cluster of ships at the edge of the system. Krellan ships? Samuel asked. No, but they're using communication protocols similar to what we saw during the Krellan attack. I think they're using the same command structure. Frank Murphy, who had been quietly examining the room's systems, joined the conversation. I've been mapping the station's infrastructure through our quarters connection points. There are weaknesses in their defense systems that don't make sense for a structure this important. What kind of weaknesses? Samuel asked. Gaps in the security sensor grid override access points that don't require high-level clearance. It's as if someone wanted to make certain areas accessible in case of emergency. A soft chime interrupted them. Olivia checked her diplomatic communicator and looked surprised. It's a message request from the Tellurian ambassador. Private channel. Samuel nodded. Accept it, but keep the security protocols active. The small holographic projector on the table activated, showing the image of a Tellurian. Their blue-tinted skin and large eyes were characteristic of their species. This one wore the formal robes of a senior diplomat. Ambassador Cooper, the Tellurian said. I am Selvaris, third chair of the Talarian Diplomatic Corps. I must speak with you urgently and privately. Linda Cooper, Earth's senior ambassador who had joined them on the station, stepped forward. I am here, third chair. My team has secured this room. You may speak freely. The Talarian looked nervous. What I am about to share violates council protocol, but my government believes you must be warned. There is a plan among certain council members to isolate Earth and limit human expansion. We suspected as much, Linda said calmly. Do you have details? Several species fear your rapid advancement. Humans achieved faster than light travel only 20 years ago, yet your ships now match our middle-tier vessels. Your adaptive capability frightens many. So they backed the Krelin attack, Samuel said. The Talarian's eyes widened. You know this already. We had suspicions. Your confirmation helps. There is more, Selvaris continued. The Jacks and Meldorians have proposed a containment strategy. They plan to establish a quarantine zone around Earth's solar system, restricting all trade and technology exchange under the guise of cultural protection. Linda's expression remained diplomatic, but Samuel could see anger in her eyes. And how many council members support this? 14 of the 32 senior council races, but they need 22 for a binding resolution. So they're still gathering support, Samuel said. When is the vote? 3 days from now. After your incident with the Krellins, they accelerated their timeline. They hope to use your display of military power as evidence that humans are dangerously unpredictable. Frank let out a short laugh. They haven't seen unpredictable yet. The Talarian looked concerned. Captain Wright, the Talarian Union has traded with Earth for 7 years without incident. We find humans to be fair partners. We do not support this action against your people. We appreciate your warning, Linda said formally. Will the Talarians speak against this resolution? We will, but we are only one voice. After the transmission ended, Samuel looked at his team. Now we know. They're using diplomatic means to cripple Earth's development. What's our next move, Captain? Daniel asked. Samuel's expression hardened. We expose the conspiracy. Tomorrow, during the next council session, we show them exactly why trying to cage humanity is a very dangerous mistake. The second council session began with even more species present than before. Word had spread about the tense first meeting. Many were curious to see how the humans would defend themselves. Samuel and his team entered the chamber with perfect military posture. This time, they had brought Dr. Ryan Gibson, the ship's medical officer, with them. Linda Cooper walked at the front, her diplomatic uniform pristine. Council Speaker Zix Thera called the session to order. After reviewing the evidence presented yesterday, this council has concerns about humanity's adherence to technology disclosure agreements. Linda stepped forward. Before we address those concerns, we request permission to present new evidence relevant to this discussion. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Councillor Drav stood. What evidence could possibly excuse your military aggression? Not evidence of our actions, Linda replied calmly. Evidence of yours. Zix Thera looked uncomfortable, but nodded. Proceed, but be brief. Dr. Gibson stepped forward. He activated a holographic display showing microscopic images. These are biological samples taken from human colonists on Terra Nova last month. They contain engineered pathogens not native to either Earth or Terra Nova. The doctor highlighted certain structures in the image. These pathogens target specific human genetic markers. They are designed to cause illness, but not death, to weaken but not eliminate. Councillor Lurvex stood up. What does this have to do with your attack on Krillin ships? The delivery method, Gibson continued calmly. These pathogens were found in water purification systems given to our colony as part of a technology exchange program with the Meldorian Empire. The chamber erupted in voices. Lurvex's scales flushed a dark green. This is absurd. The human is lying. Samuel watched the reactions carefully. Most council members looked shocked, but a few, including Drav and representatives from 3 other species, looked more concerned than surprised. "We have more," Linda said when the noise died down. "Communications Officer Anderson has decoded transmissions between Krelin attack ships and this very council station." Grace stepped forward with her evidence, but before she could speak, Zixthera interrupted. "These unsubstantiated accusations are a transparent attempt to distract from humanity's treaty violations." "They are not unsubstantiated," said a new voice from the entrance to the chamber. Everyone turned. A Krellin stood in the doorway, wearing a commander's uniform with the insignia partly torn off. His gray skin looked pale, and one of his 4 arms was in a medical sling. "This is outrageous," Drav shouted. "Who allowed a Krellin into these proceedings?" "I am Commander Trinlac of the Krellin Defense Force," the newcomer said, walking slowly to the center of the chamber. "I commanded the 3rd vessel in the attack on the human colonies." Samuel felt Daniel tense beside him, ready for action, but Samuel placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," he whispered. "The attack was not a Krellin initiative," Trinlac continued. "We received orders from High Command, who were acting on directives from Counselor Drav and Lurvex. We were told to provoke a human response that would justify severe council action." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Security forces moved toward Trinlac, but the Krellin stood his ground. "Why are you betraying your people?" Lurvex demanded. "Because I watched my crew die for your political games," Trinlac replied. "I watched human ships rescue Krellin survivors before their vessels exploded. The humans you paint as savages showed more honor than the council members who used us as pawns." Counselor Drav was on his feet. "This Krellin is clearly a human collaborator. Arrest him immediately." Council security forces began moving toward Trinlac and the human delegation. Samuel noticed they were drawing weapons. Linda maintained her diplomatic composure, but Samuel saw the subtle change in her posture. She was angry now, truly angry. Samuel pressed a small button on his wrist communicator, a signal to the UES defender. The polite phase of this mission was officially over. "Ambassador Cooper," he said quietly, "I believe diplomatic protocols have been exhausted." Linda nodded slightly. "I believe you're right, Captain Wright. Activate Contingency Plan Delta." Daniel Kelly and his security team moved into protective formation around their group as council guards approached from all sides. For the first time since arriving at the council station, Samuel allowed himself to smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. Council security forces moved in quickly, weapons drawn. The leader, a tall Jax with captain insignia, pointed at the human delegation. "By order of Council Emergency Protocols, you are all detained pending investigation," he announced. Samuel watched as Daniel and his security team moved with practiced precision. They didn't draw weapons. They didn't need to. The first guard who approached was on the floor in seconds, his weapon now in Daniel's hand. 2 more guards rushed forward and were similarly disarmed and immobilized. The council members watched in shock as 5 trained security guards were neutralized by the human security team without a single shot fired. "That's enough," Samuel said calmly. The human security team froze instantly. The remaining council guards hesitated, suddenly unsure. Samuel stepped forward to address the council directly. His voice was no longer diplomatic or deferential. "For 3 years, humanity has played by your rules. We've been patient, respectful, and courteous. That ends today." The chamber was completely silent. "We came here seeking peaceful cooperation with the galactic community. Instead, we found conspiracy, biological warfare against our colonies, and attempts to cage our species." Zixthera rose. "These are serious accusations without proof." Samuel cut in. "Strategic Officer Wilson, show them our proof." Heather Wilson, who had remained quiet until now, activated a larger holographic display. It showed detailed records of communications between Counselor Drav, Lurvex, and several other council members. Next came images of Meldorian ships delivering weapons to Krellin vessels. "We've known about your conspiracy for months," Samuel continued. Every meeting, every transmission, every secret shipment of restricted technology. We've documented it all. Impossible. Lurvex sputtered. Our communications are encrypted with the highest security protocols. Nickel smiled slightly. Your highest security is approximately 40 years behind current human encryption standards. Samuel's wrist communicator beeped twice. He nodded to Olivia, who activated a new display showing the space outside the council station. The fleet of ships appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. 20 human vessels, all larger and more advanced than the UES Defender, decloaked just outside council space. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Even Counselor Drav looked stunned. The ships you've seen until now were our diplomatic fleet, Samuel explained. What you see on the screen is a small part of our defensive fleet. Linda stepped forward. Captain Wright's ships could have destroyed this station before our meeting began. Instead, we chose to give you a chance to address this conspiracy openly and honorably. This is outrageous intimidation, shouted a representative from the Jax Collective. No, Samuel replied firmly. This is clarity. Humanity will not be contained. We will not be used as pawns in your political games, and we certainly will not tolerate attacks on our colonies. He looked directly at Six Thera. You have a choice to make. Acknowledge this conspiracy and hold the guilty accountable, or experience humanity without its courteous mode. Counselor Drav stood up, trembling with rage. You dare threaten this council? We represent over 400 spacefaring civilizations. And yet, Samuel said quietly, you feared one. You feared us so much that you conspired in secret, planted biological agents on our colonies, and orchestrated attacks on our people. Ask yourselves why. Linda spoke again, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. Earth does not seek conflict. We never have. What we seek is equal standing in this galactic community. Samuel surveyed the chamber slowly. You have 6 hours to reach a decision. During that time, my ships will remain in position. Any vessel attempting to enter or leave this system will be intercepted. He turned to Trinlak, the Krillin commander. You have shown honor today. You're welcome to join us if you wish protection. The Krillin looked surprised but nodded gratefully. As the human delegation prepared to leave the chamber, Counselor Core of the Plexans rose. What exactly are your demands, Captain Wright? Samuel turned back. Justice for those who conspired against Earth, a full public acknowledgement of these actions, and a new council protocol that ensures no species can be targeted as we were. Zixthera looked around at the fragmented council. And if we refuse? Samuel's expression was perfectly calm. Then you'll see what humanity is truly capable of when we stop being polite. The council chamber erupted into chaos as soon as the human delegation left. Samuel could hear the shouting even as the doors closed behind them. Daniel and his security team formed a protective circle around the group as they moved through the corridors. Back to our quarters, Olivia asked. Samuel shook his head. No, they'll try to contain us there. We're heading to Docking Bay 7. Nicole looked at him with surprise. That's not where our shuttle is docked. Exactly, Samuel replied. Lieutenant Powell secured us an alternative exit strategy. As they rounded a corner, they saw a group of aliens waiting for them. Samuel tensed, but these weren't security forces. A Tellarian stepped forward. Ambassador Cooper, Captain Wright. The Tellarian said, I am Prime Delegate Ren Lore. My government has instructed me to offer our full support to Earth in this matter. Linda nodded gracefully. The people of Earth thank you, Prime Delegate. We are not alone. Renlor continued. The Artaxian Federation has also chosen to stand with humanity. This news surprised even Samuel. The Artaxians were a powerful but reclusive species who rarely involved themselves in council politics. Why would the Artaxians support us? Heather asked quietly. A tall, silver-skinned being stepped forward from the Tellarian group. Because we recognize injustice when we see it. The Artaxian's voice was deep and melodic. I am Sentinel Vaxturi of the Artaxian High Command. My people have observed the Council's treatment of Earth for some time. We find it distasteful. Samuel nodded respectfully to the Artaxian. Your support is appreciated, Sentinel. Several other Council races are meeting now to discuss their positions, Renlor added. The Zilari Compact and the Novan Republic have already indicated they will distance themselves from the conspirators. Samuel exchanged glances with Linda. That's nearly a third of the Council already. Politics shifts quickly when power balances change, Linda replied. Renlor led them through service corridors to avoid Council security. We have established a secure communication hub in the Talarian Embassy section. You will be safe there while negotiations continue. As they walked, Samuel received updates from the UES Defender. Our ships are in position, he told the others. No vessels have attempted to leave the system yet. When they reached the Talarian Embassy, Samuel was surprised to find representatives from 6 different species waiting for them. All looked nervous but determined. The news is spreading throughout the station, Renlor explained. Many species have suffered from the Council's power imbalance. They see this as an opportunity for change. Frank Murphy approached Samuel. Captain, the Talarians have offered access to their communication systems. With your permission, I'd like to work with their technicians to establish secure channels to our fleet. Approved, Samuel said, and set up a direct line to Admiral Collins. She needs to know what's happening. For the next 2 hours, the human delegation met with representatives from potential allied species. The Talarian Embassy became an impromptu diplomatic hub as more races sent observers to assess the situation. Linda expertly guided these discussions, her years of diplomatic training serving her well. Samuel was impressed by how she balanced humanity's strength with reassurances that Earth sought partnership, not domination. The Council has operated unchecked for too long, said a representative from the Novan Republic. Many of us have waited for an opportunity to challenge the status quo. We didn't come here looking to upend the galactic political structure, Linda replied. Perhaps not, said Sentinel Vaxturi, but that may be the outcome regardless. As Samuel watched the discussions unfold, Nickel approached him with a concerned expression. Captain, she said quietly, I've detected unusual power fluctuations throughout the station. The patterns don't match normal operations. Samuel frowned. Could it be a response to our fleet's presence? I don't think so. These fluctuations are internal, mostly in life support and security systems. Before Samuel could respond, Ethan rushed into the room. Captain, we're picking up encrypted transmissions across multiple frequencies. They're using Ajax's military protocol, but they're coming from all over the station. Samuel's expression hardened. They're activating sleeper agents. He turned to address everyone in the room. Secure all entrances. The conspirators are making their final move. The lights in the Talarian Embassy flickered and dimmed. Emergency alarms began to sound throughout the station. What's happening? Asked the Novan representative, looking around nervously. Nickel checked her datapad. Life support systems are failing in multiple sections. Oxygen levels are dropping in areas with our potential allies. Samuel turned to Sentinel Vaxturi. They're targeting anyone who supports us. The Artaxian nodded grimly. A desperate tactic. Frank, can we counter this? Samuel asked. Frank looked up from his work with the Talarian technicians. Maybe, but I'll need access to the environmental control hub. That's in the central core, Renlor said. Heavily guarded. Samuel made a quick decision. Lieutenant Powell, take Nickel, Frank, and 2 security officers. Get to that hub and stabilize life support. Ethan nodded sharply. Yes, sir. Daniel, secure this embassy. No one gets in or out without verification. As Samuel gave orders, Linda approached with Trenlac. Captain, the Krelin commander has information about the conspirators' fallback plan. They will be gathering in the Council's private chambers, Trenlac explained. It's the most secure location on the station. From there, they can override most systems. Samuel considered this. We need to confront them directly. Linda, You and I will take a team there. That won't be easy, Daniel warned. The private chambers have their own security systems. Which is why we'll bring our new allies, Samuel said, looking at Vaxturi. The Artaxians have access codes as senior council members, correct? The tall alien inclined his head. We do. I will accompany you. As they prepared to move out, the station shook violently. Alarms blared with increased urgency. What was that? Linda asked. Grace checked her communications. Captain, the Defender reports weapons fire inside the station. Someone's activated internal defense systems. We need to move now, Samuel ordered. Every minute we delay, more people are at risk. They split into 2 teams. Ethan led his group toward the environmental controls while Samuel, Linda, Daniel, and 3 security officers followed Vaxturi toward the council's private chambers. Renlor and other allies remained to coordinate with the human fleet. The corridors were chaotic. Station residents ran in panic as life support warnings echoed through the speakers. Security forces were overwhelmed trying to maintain order. Samuel's team moved quickly, avoiding the main pathways. Vaxturi led them through service tunnels known only to senior council members. The private chambers are just ahead, Vaxturi said as they reached a heavy security door. The door slid open before they could use the access codes. 4 armed guards stood inside, weapons ready. Behind them, Counselor Drav and Lurvex watched with cold expressions. Captain Wright, Drav said. How predictable that you would come here. Daniel raised his weapon, but Samuel signaled him to hold. This doesn't need to go further, Counselor. End the attacks on the station's systems. That's not possible, Lurvex replied. The protocols have been initiated and cannot be stopped. You're endangering innocent people, Linda said. Your own people. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. Drav responded coldly. Humanity represents too great a threat to galactic stability. Vaxturi stepped forward. The council was formed to prevent exactly this kind of persecution. The council was formed to maintain order, Drav snapped. Humans advance too quickly, adapt too readily. In another century, they would dominate us all. Samuel's communicator beeped. It was Nicole. Captain, we've reached environmental controls, but there's more. We've found a device attached to the station's power core. It's some kind of doomsday weapon. If life support fails completely, it's set to detonate. Samuel looked at the conspirators with new understanding. You were never planning to contain us. If you couldn't control humanity, you'd create an incident to justify destroying us. Your species is too dangerous to exist freely in this galaxy, Lurvex said simply. Samuel's expression changed. The last traces of diplomatic courtesy vanished from his face. For the first time, the council members saw the full, unfiltered determination of a human pushed too far. Daniel, Samuel said quietly, secure these rooms, by any means necessary. The security chief nodded once, and the human security team moved with frightening efficiency. The 4 guards were disarmed and unconscious before they could fire a single shot. Samuel stepped toward the conspirators. Now you're going to tell us exactly how to disable that device, and then you're going to witness firsthand why threatening humanity was your worst mistake. 3 days later, the council station was a different place. Emergency repairs had restored all systems. The great council chamber, once arranged in rigid hierarchical tiers, had been reconfigured into a circular arrangement where all representatives sat at equal height. Samuel stood with Linda and their team as the new emergency session began. Zix Thera was no longer the speaker. In their place stood Renlor of the Tellarians, elected by a slim majority to oversee the transition. This emergency council assembly is now in session, Renlor announced. Our first order of business is to acknowledge the events that have brought us here. Samuel watched as recordings played on the large screens around the chamber. They showed the human security team racing through the station, disabling the doomsday device with only minutes to spare. Other recordings showed human medical teams treating injured aliens from various species, regardless of their political stance. The conspiracy against Earth has been fully documented, Renlor continued. Former councilors Drav, Lurvex, and 12 others have been removed from their positions pending formal charges. The chamber was subdued. Many representatives looked embarrassed or ashamed. In light of these events, we now invite Captain Samuel Wright to address the assembly. Samuel walked to the central platform. He wore his formal uniform, but his posture was different from his first appearance. There was no deference now, no careful courtesy. He stood as an equal. 3 days ago, I stood in this chamber and told you that humanity's courtesy had reached its limit, Samuel began. Today, I stand here to tell you that humanity's capacity for cooperation has not. He paused, looking around the chamber. When we discovered the Doomsday device, we had minutes to act. In those minutes, my crew made a choice. They could have evacuated to our ships and watched this station destroy itself. Instead, they risked their lives to save everyone, even those who had conspired against us. Samuel gestured to Frank and Nicole, who had worked frantically to disable the bomb. That is humanity. We can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. We prefer the former. Linda stepped forward. Earth proposes a new foundation for the Galactic Council, one based on mutual respect, transparent communication, and equal standing. No more hidden hierarchies. No more secret voting blocks. Samuel continued. As proof of our commitment to this vision, we are sharing certain technologies that will benefit all Council species. Medical advances for treating radiation poisoning. Improved air recycling systems for space habitats. Efficient water purification methods. The chamber buzzed with surprised whispers. But not weapons, Samuel added firmly. Never weapons. Those who sought to destroy us feared our military capability. They were right to fear it, but they were wrong to believe we would use it for domination. Vax Turi of the Artaxians rose. The Artaxian Federation supports Earth's proposal. We have observed humans closely during this crisis. They fought with precision when necessary, but showed greater eagerness to heal than to harm. One by one, representatives from various species stood to voice their support. Even some who had been aligned with the conspirators now sought a new beginning. After the formal session ended, a representative from the Zilari approached Samuel. I do not understand, the small green alien said. You knew of the conspiracy for months. Why maintain your courtesy when you knew we planned to betray you? Samuel smiled slightly. Courtesy isn't weakness. It's a choice. Humans understand something that perhaps wasn't clear to the Council. True strength lies in choosing when to be courteous and when to be forceful. And how do we know which one we are seeing from humans at any given time? The Zilari asked nervously. That's simple, Samuel replied. If we're being polite, be very careful about what you do next. It's when we stop being polite that you can be certain of our intentions. As the human delegation prepared to return to the UES Defender, Samuel looked back at the Council station. The old power structure had fallen. A new galactic order was beginning, one where humanity would take its rightful place not as newcomers or subjects, but as equals. And if necessary, they could always turn off their courteous mode again.